We start at the White House, where they're in increasing bluster from President Trump about a caravan of around 1,000 to 1,500 immigrants from Central America, the group traveling through Mexico toward the U.S. border, and the president says it must be stopped. He's considering using the U.S. military, he says, along the southern border to do it. This occurs as new concerns grow about U.S. troop commitment in Syria and a possible trade war with China. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts starts us off tonight from the North Lawn on the Politics News. John.
Greg, good evening to you. President Trump still insists that the best way to secure our southern border is with a massive wall. But in the absence of a wall, President Trump today floated another controversial idea.
Okay, thank you very much.
President Trump today gave no details or would say if U.S. troops would be involved. But meeting with Baltic leaders today, he revealed he wants the U.S. military guarding the southern border.
Been speaking with General Mattis. We're going to be doing things militarily. Until we can have a wall and proper security, we're going to be guarding our border with the military. That's a big step. We really haven't done that before.
Officials say the White House counsel's office has been looking into the legal aspects of putting the military along the border. The National Guard has been used several times to assist the Border Patrol, and in the early 90s, a military joint task force was on the border for counter-narcotics and counter-terrorism. While a plan has yet to be formulated, just the idea drew a sharp response from former Mexican President Vicente Fox, who tweeted, "Demilitarize the southern border is to provoke more hate and distance even further our nations. Somebody has to talk some sense into him. He's elevating his hate toward Mexico, causing a greater conflict." President Trump claimed victory today in his public pressure Twitter campaign to have Mexico stop the caravan of Central American migrants traveling to the U.S. border. The president had gone so far as to threaten Nafta if Mexico didn't do something.
I told Mexico very strongly, you're going to have to do something about these caravans, and they have to do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to do the Nafta deal. NAFTA's been fantastic for Mexico, bad for us.
The group that organized the caravan, Pueblos Sin Fronteras, People Without Borders, criticized the president for demonizing an annual event they claim is a humanitarian mission.
Migrants should not be abandoned because of some tweets and political hate. It's very characteristic of Donald Trump to govern via tweets.
While President Trump is seeking an expanded role for the military in defending the border, he is looking at shrinking the U.S. profile in Syria.
It's time. It's time. We were very successful against ISIS. We'll be successful against anybody militarily. But sometimes it's time to come back home. And we're thinking about that very seriously. Okay?
But even the president's own advisors say the U.S. needs to stay in Syria for the foreseeable future.
We are in Syria to fight ISIS. That is our mission, and that mission isn't over, and we're going to complete that mission.
Experts worry a U.S. pullout could lead to a resurgence of ISIS and remove a counterweight to Russian influence in Syria. Today, President Trump was asked about his relationship with Vladimir Putin, whether he saw him as an enemy or friend.
I think I could have a very good relationship with Russia and with President Putin. And if I did, that would be a great thing. And there's also a great possibility that that won't happen. Who knows?
And the president dismissed the notion he isn't tough on Russia, pointing to his recent order to expel 60 Russian diplomats in the U.S.
So there are many things that I've done, and not only the 60 diplomats. Germany did 4, France did 4, we did 60. There's nobody been tougher on Russia.
On whether U.S. troops should stay in Syria, President Trump today revealed that in his March 20th meetings with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, President Trump told Salman if Saudi Arabia wants U.S. troops to stay in Syria to stabilize the situation, well, maybe they should pick up the tab. Brett?
How that would work is really the question. John, thank you.